who is our new partner in this whole thing, and is really a genius. And he's so helpful with really bringing the level of the Arnold Classic another level up. And so it's been fantastic working with him. Really fantastic. And I want to say thank you to the people that make this really so successful. The whole team of the Arnold Classic that worked throughout the whole year, with Brian, who you just heard from, who is an extraordinary human being and so smart with where he is taking this show.
All right, what's going on, you guys? Nick here with Nick Strength and Power, and today I'm joined by Brian Powers, who a lot of you guys might not know, but you're going to get to know a little bit better today. He is the executive director of the Arnold Classic, and a lot of the big decisions that you see made are kind of the brainchild of Brian here. So Brian, why don't you talk a little bit about what you do and how you got started?
Sure, and thanks, Nick, for the introduction. I am the executive director of the Arnold Sports Festival. I am principally responsible for the production of the Sports Festival, the Arnold Classic, the Arnold Strongman Classic, the Expo, and I support and work with all of our various independent sport chairs, whether it's gymnastics, USA weightlifting, USA powerlifting, and the other 15 other sports that we have at the show, to produce what people know in the aggregate as being the Arnold Sports Festival. So I do that in the US and in the UK. And I work with our licensed partners in Brazil and in Spain to produce 4 events globally to about 500,000 fans annually.
And was the first Arnold that you were involved with the 2021? Was that the first year?
Yeah, coming out of the pandemic in 2021, we produced my first event, which was the Arnold Classic only, which was the one that Nick Walker won. I think is probably what people will most remember it for. What I'll most remember it for was, just dealing with COVID and the nightmares of trying to get organized and plan a live event in a very short period of time. I think we put that event together in about 60 days. So for myself, it was challenging operationally, both to learn as much as I could about bodybuilding and trying to marshal the resources to just get the assets in place to put the show on, whether it was getting airfares or getting flights into Columbus, because at the time there were not a lot of flights, and just getting people who were still open and doing business, AV companies that could support the show, that kind of stuff. So yeah, that was definitely perhaps not as big as this year, but quite challenging for my first thing.
So I was going to say, why don't you talk a little bit about the learning curve of learning about the bodybuilding world, because you kind of are an outsider in a way, but now I would say you're one of the more well-connected people in the bodybuilding industry for someone that really didn't know much about it going into it. So what was the learning curve like getting connected with all these different, influencers and pros, and talk a little bit about that?
So I think it's 2 things. One, I have a lot of experience producing live events, whether those are activations or exhibitions. I was fortunate to get training at a company called Informa, which is, I think, now the largest exhibition organizer in the world. And so I got a lot of institutional experience doing that. And coming from bodybuilding, I was working in what they call, the Wall Street term for it is enthusiast events, but it's things like car shows, Comic-Cons, things where there's a particularly high level of interest in one subject matter, and creating or curating content that people are super excited about. So I think I had a very good kind of foundational education in understanding how to organize an expo and understanding how to create content that people wanted to see, regardless of what the industry was. In this case, it was fitness, but it could have been chess or watchmaking or whatever. I sort of had a background in that. What was different and what was challenging was producing live sports, which is very, very different than my experience previously. And into an industry that, to your point, is it's even though it's a big business, it's a pretty small industry, and people who have grown up in it and have reputations in it are people who've been doing it for decades. Well, I'd like to think it's my glowing personality that attracted me to people in the industry. I think a big part of it is I work for Arnold Schwarzenegger, and that's a huge easy button when it comes to gaining credibility in the industry. I rely on his reputation in the industry and his reputation for quality and the things that he does. So, it is, I'm happy that people have opened a door and been very helpful to me. The people that I was when I was starting out and really trying to learn about things. I think, Jim Mannion, for example, extremely helpful to me right off the bat, got in there and helped us organize the event and really kind of told me about what events were and how they worked and how to produce them properly and who to work with and what judges to have and that sort of thing. He's been immensely helpful to me and still immensely helpful to me. And then, it's sort of just kind of expanded from there. I think, Hani Rambod's a good friend of mine and has helped me a lot in sort of understanding the particularities and politics of bodybuilding a little bit. And, and I've had an opportunity, like I said, to just build it one step at a time. And now it's funny, now when we're getting ready to do the show, I think about all the people that I know that have become friends of mine or become business colleagues of mine. And this is my 36th month on the job. So it hasn't been very long, but in some ways it seemed like a very long time. So I've been very fortunate. The business has been extremely generous to me in wanting to see the sport grow. And everybody that I've talked to has really taken the time to educate me about what it is. And I'll always be grateful to those people, whether it's Cutler or Coleman or, any of these guys. They take the time to really tell me what I'm doing wrong and what I'm doing right and what I need to think about. And that's helped us kind of maintain the authenticity, which is most important to these events.
Well, one of the reasons why I wanted to do this interview is I've been telling you for a long time that you have such good insight to the behind the scenes of putting on a show of this scale. And I've heard these stories 1,000 times because we talk on a pretty regular basis over the past 3 years. And I thought this would be something that I think the fans would enjoy hearing, is all the work and all the stuff behind the scenes, because all they see is the end result. They just see the weekend and they don't realize that during the course of the year, all the production that goes into this. So I wanted you to talk a little bit about what went into the free live stream, because I know that was kind of a challenge for you, but that was one of the things that I think the fans appreciated the most about this year's Arnold. But I know that wasn't an easy thing for you to pull off necessarily.
Yeah. So the live stream has been a huge success for us and really a surprising success for us. And while I'd love to take credit for it, that was very much Arnold's idea. And he felt was very strongly that it was part of his overall mission to elevate and promote the sport of bodybuilding, that he felt that bodybuilding needed to be seen by as many people as possible. And that it was our challenge as a crew to figure out how to pay for it and make it work. So, I've done pay-per-view stuff in the past for other sports during the pandemic. I worked on the Floyd Mayweather and Logan Paul fight. I've done some other things, but live at this scale, when you have somebody who has 24 million Instagram followers and he tells people to go watch something, that means a lot of people are going to watch it. And so balancing the priorities of making a stable platform, making a product that people want to watch, and producing it at a level of quality that people have come to associate with Arnold's brand at a cost that's feasible, was a big, big challenge. And I've been extremely fortunate in my career to have people who are willing to help me when they don't necessarily have to. So our television production company, Tupelo Honey, is owned by a company called Gray Media, but used to be owned by a guy named Kerry Glotzer. Kerry still runs the company, and they are the largest producer of independent content for ESPN. But they've been willing to work with us on our fees and work with our budgets to try to be involved in the event and support the show. So it's been a great partnership for us, and it's a big reason why it looks like TV. It doesn't just look like we're recording a live event. And we're still building on it, and we're not exactly where we want to be, but we're taking steps every year to make it better. And I'm really excited about that. I'm excited that fans can see it and that we've kind of found a model that we think we can do, that we can scale, and that brands are interested in supporting. So it's been a great, extremely big challenge for our team, but something that's been super rewarding just based on the fan feedback and everything else.
We'll talk a little bit about what went into the lighting of the show this year, because that was a big topic of conversation with the fans. They thought the lighting was good, and I know that you kind of consider every different avenue with how to light the show. You look at fan feedback, you look at what's actually possible, what's going to look good on screen versus what's going to look good in person. So talk a little bit about the process of getting the lighting as good as a lot of people felt that it was this year.
Yeah, so lighting is complicated, especially when it's the most important element of your athletic event. I often see comments from fans that say the lighting's too dark, or I can't see, or it's not bright enough. And I think there's a lot of different technical challenges that people may not be considering or aware of when they're watching the live stream. When you're talking about principal lighting, which is the lighting of the athletes, it's not just the amount of light or where the light's placed or what the temperature of the light is. It's the contrast between how dark the setting is and what type of light that you're using. And when you're lighting a live event like a Broadway show or a play, that's one type of lighting. And when you're lighting TV, it's a much different type of lighting. And what our show is trying to do is balance between those two things. If I lit the stage in a way that was perfect for television, the judges, the paying audience, the people sitting in the chairs would be unhappy because it would look very washed out. It'd be very white light. It would be like if you were in a Best Buy having a bodybuilding competition. Whereas if I lit it dramatically perfect for a theatrical performance, that's a much warmer light. And the only analogy, I was just talking to someone about this today, and I hope this is an apt analogy for your viewers, but it's sort of like when you were in middle school and you were watching like a tape of Shakespeare or something, or on PBS, like a tape of like a theater presentation, and the lighting looked terrible and it was dark and weird. Well, to the people in the audience, it was perfect. But when you were recording it for video playback, it looks dark and shadowy and not correct. So we have to try to balance those two totally different lighting cases to create a product that looks both good on screen and good in person. And so we're still experimenting with it. I was happy. I think we took a step forward this year, but I still think there's steps to go. And some of that might have to be with editing or changing or processing what comes into our cameras versus what goes out to the fans. Because I can't take a risk that we're going to compromise the integrity of the sport, how it's being judged, because I want the people at home to see it perfectly. So my apologies if you didn't like the lighting. I know there were some people who didn't like the lighting. I know you like the lighting, but it's something that we're struggling with and it's something we're still working on.
Well, you made kind of a good point when we talked about this. I think it might have been today when you said, yeah, maybe the fans watching the live stream would prefer just a plain black backdrop and that Iron Man type of lighting. But like when you talk about a show like the Olympia, they've got people paying for tickets coming to see a show. So when you see the smoke and the lasers and all this big LEDs and the screen, they want it to look like and feel like an event, like a production. So there's the aspect of the people watching on the live stream, even though they might be the majority of people that are watching, they're still selling tickets to people that want an in-person experience. So it's kind of the challenge of finding a balance between those two things, satisfying both audiences, which is what I think you kind of do a really good job of doing.
Well, thank you, but you never know. Well, you do know, actually, immediately right after, because everyone tells you that you're dumb online, but I think that people maybe don't necessarily understand the economics of these shows either. So yes, online, there's a much larger audience, but from a revenue perspective, it's the on-site event that pays the bills. And the Olympia is an incredible show. Whether you like their editorial choices or not is your choice. But technically speaking, the things that they do are very challenging to do. They're not easy to do. And they have an audience that's an international audience that comes every year that has come to expect that type of production. And so for them to just flip it around and do a black drop for the benefit of the viewers at home is not a practical solution. And it's not what most fans want. There is a hardcore audience of bodybuilding fans. Some of them watch your channel, I'm sure, are watching it right now and are shaking their fists at the sky, telling me I should be doing, you know, black sparkly backdrops or black velvet backdrops. But the fact of the matter is that want to be entertained. They want something going on stage other than just the physique. And, you know, to what degree you want to go down that road in terms of production. I think for the show that the Olympia produces and the scale of what they're producing, I don't think that that's necessarily misplaced. And for what we're doing and the things that our kind of culture and the way that we've been doing things for a long time, I think we do the right thing for our show. And it's up to the fans to decide what they like. But I don't think there's necessarily a right answer or a wrong answer. I think you got to do what makes sense for your audience. And I think as long as you're doing things that are authentic to your audience, then you're doing the right thing for the show.
So is there anything you think you would change for next year as far as the on-stage production, whether it's the lighting or anything with the screen or the screens or the stream, or was there anything you felt could be better? Any criticism that you saw or anything that you personally just didn't like?
Well, it's kind of like when you renovate your house or paint the inside of your house. Like, I think you see things that maybe the audience hasn't seen. But there are certainly things that we want to do to enhance the digital experience that we have not gotten a chance to do. Like, I would like to have a native app for iOS and Android and for whatever other Roku and the 5 million other devices that exist out there, so that people can just go right to their TV and hit it and go right into it. That was something that I wanted to get done that we can get done this year. I'd like to create more interactive experiences for fans to participate in the show at home, whether that's polling or we haven't turned the comments on yet because I feel like that's going to open up an ugly thing. But we might try comments. But we're always tinkering and looking at what other live events are doing to see what we think we can bring to bodybuilding that would make it more exciting. But people have to understand too that every time we do something like that, it's another workflow that impacts everything else that happens with the show. So when we make a decision to do something, we have to be very cognizant about how it impacts the entire event. And sometimes that means that things that seem very simple to do become very, very complicated. And we have to decide, we have to be pretty ruthless in how we allocate resources because we are running such a gigantic show. So we are going to make incremental improvements, but when we say we're going to do something, we really test it. And we do spend a lot of time trying to make sure that it works perfectly by the time it's showtime, because we only get one shot at it. And I think we'll update the scenics on the stages a little bit more. We'll do different layouts for the LEDs. We're looking at trying to make capacity bigger in Battelle. I don't know if we can or not, or if we're going to, potentially move it somewhere else. But there was obviously an overwhelming amount of demand for bodybuilding tickets this year. I think we sold out the Saturday show in record time. We came very close to, if not, we did sell out Friday. I didn't check the final numbers, but it was a very well attended show, and the feedback from the fans has been overwhelmingly positive. And we want to try to continue to support and grow the show. So we're going to figure out ways to do that.
So I've seen a lot of people ask this as well. Based on the success of the free stream this year, will it continue to be free in the future?
If great sponsors like Bucked Up continue to support the show, then yes. The challenges with live streaming are our costs of production are significant in the way that we think is appropriate for Arnold's brand. Like, we spend more money and time on producing a product that feels more like television, and that costs a lot of money. And then secondarily, bandwidth is expensive at the scale that we're consuming it currently. So it is a significant investment, and it's one that we think in the long term will pan out. We had great success with our partner ESN in doing a German live stream broadcast, which had 175,000 views just in Germany alone. I think we had 30,000 in Austria and something like 20,000 in Switzerland. So in our Germanic speaking countries, it was a big success. And I think that may be an opportunity for us to bring in other partners in other languages and kind of syndicate out the product to other markets and potentially generate additional revenue there. But we had almost 3.2 million views of the live stream. We had almost 360,000 unique verified email addresses for the weekend. I think we had 144,000 concurrent viewers during the Classic. That's a lot of bandwidth. And I think the average viewer watched something like 44 minutes of the whether they watch the cage and they watch the strongman or they watch the bodybuilding throughout the weekend. The average attendee watched about 42 minutes of the show, which is amazing.
Well, I think part
so
of that is because you guys did such a good job of getting the runtime down to a much more manageable show to watch, so people are sticking around longer.
Yeah, I think that's part of what I try to hammer on the team is about what is the consumer experience, right? Like, what would you want to see if you were consuming this product and not producing it? And people want things to run on time. They want to know when the show's going to start and when it's going to end. And they want to know when bodybuilding is going to be on. And that's another thing we can work on. We can work on, doing notifications and stuff to let people know, like bodybuilding starting in 10 minutes, get started, and then you can go on and see bodybuilding in 10 minutes, which was
that would be a good idea.
Yeah, I'm full of them. I still got to execute them. Urge people to watch the whole show. Like, it is a show. It's not just stream of the live stream, right? Or of the men's open bodybuilding or classic physique or wellness or bikini or whatever it is, the division that you're particularly interested in. I feel like we put on a program that is interesting, even if those are not necessarily your favorite divisions. It's entertaining because it moves relatively quickly and you kind of get a sense of maybe divisions that you weren't particularly familiar with. So I would encourage people to try to watch the whole thing. It's still available for replay on arnoldsports.com. And the live stream coming up this weekend will be available on arnoldsports.com and on arnoldsportsuk.com. But like I said, we work very, very hard to try to create products and not just fully realized products that people feel like that have weight to them, that have thought to them, that have production value to them. And I thought that stream worked really well. I thought the Rogue stream, if you watched any of the strongman stuff and you go check out Rogue's YouTube channel, was extremely well produced this year. Both the video quality, the lighting, how they've edited and recut their content, it's remarkable. All that stuff happens in Columbus in one weekend. Sometimes it even surprises me, and I look for them all year long. So I thought the animal cage was really good too. That was kind of a surprise, something we sort of put together last minute, but that content came out great too. So
yeah,
there's lots of stuff to watch there.
That was the first time it was back in how many years?
5 years. We haven't had since they were going to do it in 2020 when the expo was canceled, and then they couldn't do it, and it took them some time for us as partners to be able to build up sufficient capacity to warrant that level of investment from animal. But I think they had a great time. I think they'll be back next year, and we're really happy to have them back. They do provide a lot of really great content for strength fans, and even if you don't follow strength sports, you get to learn a little bit more about that. And the people that are really the stars of those particular sports do come to the cage, and they do incredible things in that piece of floor on the concrete in the convention center. So yeah, there's lots of cool stuff in there to check out, and I'm sure that those clips will live on in your feeds, in your viewers' feeds, respectively, for the rest of the year.
So, as far as the business of bodybuilding goes, which do you think is a better model for the live streaming, as far as pay-per-view versus the sponsored free live stream for the future of bodybuilding? Because all these shows have really kind of changed their dynamic because of COVID, and they kind of adopted this live streaming model, and most of them charge for the stream. But what do you think the future for this business model is? Is it going to be these sponsored free streams, or do you think the live stream pay-per-view model works better?
It really, I don't want to say like a cop-out answer, but it sort of really depends, right?
Yeah.
So we tried pay-per-view for a couple of years, and we're not as successful as we would have liked to. But there are other events like the Olympia, I think is what you're trying to allude to. And they've been doing it for a very long time, and they probably have a very successful model doing it. So I don't know that it's necessarily one size fits all. Smaller shows, you're not going to get the eyeballs sufficient to get enough sponsorship revenue to do a live stream. Obviously, fans are always going to vote for free because it's free, right? But it's always going to be a mix of things. And I think we benefit greatly from having Arnold on the live stream. You know, we have a significant advantage in that regard insofar as like brands want to affiliate with Arnold Schwarzenegger. So it makes my job a lot easier when Arnold's on the screen versus when, you know, it's just bodybuilding. So we have a lot of, I have a lot of advantages in that regard that other promoters don't. So I don't want to say, you know, it should always be free or it should always be pay-per-view, because I don't think that's necessarily the correct answer. And I think however you contribute to bodybuilding, whether you're buying the live stream or you're watching it for free and you're supporting the brands that are supporting the live stream, those are all those dollars are important to those athletes, because they allow these businesses to raise the prize money and to provide athletes the best experience possible when they're on site. I can assure you the last 5 years, or at least from our perspective, and I'm sure if I spoke to Jake, he would agree, it's been a very difficult business, and it's required a lot of investment and reinvestment to keep the doors open and continue to pay the athletes. And this is a business at the end of the day. I think that Arnold and Jake both deserve a lot of credit for being extremely generous in continuing to support these athletes and continuing to increase the prize money for both shows. It's not just us. I mean, I know we're getting a lot of attention for it now, but Jake has made significant investments in the women's sports, and has raised the prize money in other categories. So it's not like they've done nothing. They've done an enormous amount for both things, and they deserve a lot of credit for running full prize money events at a time when we were not getting full revenue for the shows. And I think maybe not today, but when people look back 10 years now and 15 years from now, I think that level of generosity will be looked upon as a really remarkable thing that people did, both Jake and Arnold, to keep the sport going. Because there was a time, I can tell you, we worked live events and we weren't sure we were going to have live events ever again in the way that we imagined them to be. That I have the courage to just say, no, I'm going to do it anyway because I love bodybuilding. That people really should, you know, look up to both. I know Arnold probably hates me even saying this, but the sport of bodybuilding owes those two men a great deal, is what I would say.
I was going to say, could you give us any insight into the decision of increasing the prize money? What do you think the main motivation behind that was? Was it just that the show this year was that much more successful financially and there was extra money to be had? Or what do you think the motivation for that was, the $500,000 first place increase?
I think I'm okay to say that with Arnold, it's a mix of passion and pragmatism, right? Like, he's passionate about bodybuilding, and I think he just wants to give the athletes as much money as possible. And he's been that way. I mean, he's been organizing events since 1974. People think of the Arnold Classic, and that started in 1989, which is still a long time. You know, it's 36 years, going on 37 for next year. But, you know, him and Jim Lorimer, the founder of the Arnold Sports Festival, the guy who actually started it all with Arnold, were organizing the Olympia as early as 1974, which he did up until 1981. So he's been involved in bodybuilding and bodybuilding promotion his whole life. And I think it's, in a lot of ways, it's not even so much about legacy. He's just passionate about bodybuilding. He still loves bodybuilding. We still talk about bodybuilding. He follows bodybuilding. And I think he's always constantly trying to find ways to elevate these athletes and put more money in their pockets. That's really, you know, his interest in getting involved. If you look back to early footage of him talking about it when he was a much younger man, he was always interested in making the conditions of the athletes better and getting the leaders to raise the prize money. And, you know, this has always been his goal. And I think that this decision was a mix of, yeah, we're doing better, but also I want to try to do more. And so, you know, if I were running this exclusively as a dollars and cents business, you know, I wouldn't necessarily always put investment ahead of revenue, I guess is the way I would say it. You know, spending more money on prize money before we're 100% sure that we're going to get there. But, you know, Arnold's got pretty good instincts, as you know, and I trust his judgment, obviously, and it is his show. And I'm excited for the athletes that they get this opportunity. So I don't think it's a mix of creating a business that's sustainable, right? We want it to be able to go on for years and years and decades in the future, and also just doing things that are nice for bodybuilding. So it's somewhere in the middle. You know, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I can assure fans and people at home that this man feels very passionately about bodybuilding, and he recognizes the role that it played in his overall success. And he's very much still into bodybuilding and talking about bodybuilding. So, yeah.
Do you think if the Olympia bumps theirs up to say 600,000, that the following year Arnold will bump up the prize money again to try to push the Olympia?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't think our decision making is as guided. I think to take a step back, I think bodybuilding inherently is a comparison sport. So everyone wants to compare one thing versus another because that's the nature of the sport that we're in. But I can't speak for Olympia, but we don't make business decisions based on what Olympia is doing. And I suspect that they don't make business decisions based on what we're doing. I don't think that we compete necessarily in the way that people think that we compete, or at least the way I see it online. The Olympia serves an extremely important purpose to underpinning the organizational structure of bodybuilding, from amateurs all the way to professionals to qualifying for the Olympia. It's all part of a system working with the NPC and the IFBB that promotes the sport ultimately. We run a show. We are a promoter within that system. And we happen to be owned by, you know, what I think most people would agree is, you know, the greatest and biggest bodybuilder who's ever lived. So we have an outsized place in that space, but we're not necessarily looking to supplant that space. We want to do the best show that we can do. And we're focused on what feedback people have of our product. And we'll let other people, if people want to debate which show they like better or which show is better, that's like a fun conversation for them to have. But I don't think it drives, it's not the way that I feel about the Olympia. I don't think it's the way Arnold feels about the Olympia. The Olympia is an essential part of his overall legacy. You know, it's part of what made him famous and allowed him the opportunity to do other things in life. And his relationship with Joe Weider and his legacy in bodybuilding is tied up with the Olympia. So I don't think we're thinking about trying to get in a direct competition. It doesn't make sense for us to be in a direct competition with the Olympia in the way that I think fans online would like it to be. But if people think that, and it gets more people to watch both shows, and it gets other shows to raise their prize money, then great. But that's not how I operate this business. And I've never heard. I think he's doing it to create an aspirational goal for other shows, but I don't think he's doing it because we're asking how much Olympia is paying versus how much we're paying.
All right. So as far as the Arnold Classic UK, which is this weekend, that live stream is also free, arnoldsports.com/TV. Will the Arnold Ohio and the Arnold UK always be this close in proximity, just 2 weeks apart? Or was this just a one-time test to see how it does?
So when the show's over, we'll evaluate the tests completely. I think for the athletes and the competitive calendar and what will allow us to put the best product on the show here in the UK for bodybuilding, it works. It does work because it allows athletes to do one prep and go along and stay on their diet and go on stage again and get a chance to make it another paycheck. I think we have to look at it more closely with respect to strongman because we have a lot of banged up strongman athletes from that strongman competition in Columbus is no joke. People are hurt. People are injured, you know, in terms of they can't compete. And so maybe running 2 strongman competitions back to back like that might not be the best idea in the world, but the bodybuilding, it works. We got a great lineup for both shows. There are storylines that carry between the 2 shows. And so I think in that way it's been successful. for our staff, it's been extremely challenging, but no one cares about that. That's okay. I mean, I care about it, but it's extremely difficult to run two large format exhibitions, two world championship caliber events, both in strongman and bodybuilding, with one staff in two continents, 2 weeks apart. So there's a lot of factors. Like I said, it's not your fans are interested in the Arnold Classic, and that's why we're here, and that's what we're mostly talking about. But our business is much larger than just bodybuilding. Bodybuilding is the reason that this started and why we're here. But and that is certainly the thing that I give the most amount of attention to. But there are a lot of other factors that go into the show. The show's really big. If you've never been to it, it's really big. And for a lot of fans that don't even know, we have a whole other convention center that caters more towards youth sports that had like 17,000 people in the building this weekend as well. So there's a lot of facets and things to consider that go beyond just the bodybuilding or just the product that you see on their screen. So we'll continue to look at it. But I thought the bodybuilding piece, at least competitively, helped us attract athletes like Cotty to do both shows, that the prize money to be able to do two substantial cash purses in two markets 2 weeks apart. That was the strategy. And so far, at least, it seems to have been paid off. So yeah, I would like to keep them close together, but we're going to have to talk to the athletes and see what makes the most amount of sense.
Well, speaking of the athletes, really the only point of criticism that I saw for this weekend's Arnold Classic was the lack of some divisions, that figure, physique, 212, and women's bodybuilding. Could you talk a little bit about the decision to not include those divisions and what your response is to some of the criticism from Sarah Villegas and Iris Kyle?
Well, first, I mean, a couple of different things. Number one, I respect Sarah's opinion. I obviously respect Iris's opinion. She's one of the greatest champions in the history of bodybuilding. And the choices that we make with respect to divisions are really difficult. Currently, we have 3 men's categories, 3 women's categories, and we have wheelchair, which is mostly a men's category. But there are certainly women physique athletes in wheelchair that we're aware of. I don't think we've been able to host a competition for women's wheelchair yet, but I know Nick will call me right after this. But it's a challenge, right? It comes down to resources. And again, not to just talk about what I talked about before, we have a number of different considerations beyond just bodybuilding when we talk about where we allocate our resources. So yes, we made the difficult decision to not continue on with the figure division recently. A few years earlier, we stopped having men's 212. Some of that is for runtime considerations. Some of that is just, resource considerations. But we also did add women's strongman, and that has a $75,000 cash prize, and that's been extremely successful for us. So I know it's hard for the athletes and it's hard for us to not carry every division, and it's something that we're always looking at, and we may do in different ways in the future. But for right now, we're still very much we're really still rebuilding the business. In some ways, there's some parts of our business are still recovering from the pandemic. I know it seems like a long time ago for most people, but in the events industry in particular, there is a lack of resources, whether it's manpower or access to AV equipment. There's a lot of things that have been really messed up by the pandemic. And I'm not blaming the reason why we don't have those divisions on that, other than to say that we have made investments in other women's sports. And I guess one other thing I would say is I've been super disappointed in the comments pointed at both of those women for expressing what I think is an extremely reasonable opinion to have. I would hope that people would think with their brains a little bit more when they write things down, because a lot of the stuff that's out there is super offensive and has nothing to do with the point that they're making. And if you're moderating those pages, you should think about whether or not those comments are furthering the conversation or if they're just mean. There's some mean stuff out there and it's not right. And whether we disagree or they disagree with me, that's one thing, but like some of the stuff out there is really inappropriate, and I would encourage fans to just stop doing that.
So there is a chance that we might see one or some of those divisions back in the future. It just, I know it's kind of premature now to say yes or no,
It's
but there's a
super
chance.
premature, Nick. The show ended like 10 days ago. Okay. And same with the prize money for next year. I know I got questions. It's like we got engaged and everyone wants to know the wedding date like 3 days later.
But
It's
it's not
something to look
necessarily a
at.
matter of they'll never be back.
Absolutely not. I think but it's again, it's trying to balance. It's two different things, right? Obviously, Arnold's a very successful, wealthy person, but he's not. We don't have a sustainable business if it's just him subsidizing things every year.
Sure.
So there's a balance between his generosity and having a sustainable business that we have to kind of balance, and get the profit margins of the business in a position where we can sustain the business if we have a catastrophic event. Again, if we have some sort of pandemic or some reason we can't run the show, we need to have enough resources to be able to do the show again without having to ask Arnold to make an extraordinary investment back in the show. So, and I'm also cognizant of the runtime of the show. People like the product that we're doing right now. We have a 90-minute show and a 2-hour show, and people seem to like that. So I don't know right now, as I'm talking to you at 2:00 in the morning in Birmingham, England, what exactly we're going to do, but we're aware of the criticism and we're working on trying to figure out other solutions to make it so that some of those divisions have an opportunity to compete. Do I know for sure it's going to happen in 25? No, but it's not something that we are completely unsympathetic to or something that we don't care about. That's not the case at all. It's just, sometimes we make difficult decisions. And right now that's where we're at with those divisions.
I'm curious what you would say your biggest personal contribution to the Arnold was, whether it was an idea or something you did differently since you started. What do you think was something that kind of came from you that otherwise wouldn't have gotten done?
I don't know. That's probably a question for other people to answer. I just try to work as hard as I can every single day on the show. And I'm talking to me that this is what I think about 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And the people, anybody's work, and I'd say the same thing of the Olympia people too. We don't go out there trying to put on a bad show. So we don't go out there. I don't go out there trying to put on stuff that you don't like if you're watching this at home. And so I would say the thing that I'm most proud of is helping to bring a show back that was on very unstable ground, just like a lot of other shows. And for me, I get a lot of pride out of that, but I don't think I'm alone in this industry either. There have been a lot of amazing event organizers beyond just bodybuilding who've had to undergo an extraordinary amount of work to save their events. And, it seems really great right now, but the future remains uncertain. You don't know, geopolitically, economically, health-wise, things can change in a heartbeat. So we're just trying to be a reliable partner to our sponsors, a reliable product for our fans, and a reliable experience for our athletes. So as long as we continue to work on those three things, everyone else will tell us, we'll do the analysis for us, whether they know what they're talking about or not.
Well, I guess the reverse of that question would be, what was the biggest challenge that you think you faced since you started on? What was the most challenging part of the job?
I think for myself is building credibility with a community that is where, and I don't necessarily assume that I have credibility. Certainly lots of people I get on the phone, they don't know who I am at all. But I think building important relationships with people who have a lot of credibility in the business is a better way to put it. That working to deliver on the things that I promised to people, and even when it was very difficult for us to do that, and working with people commercially to make it so it was something that they wanted to participate in, has taken an enormous amount of energy and time. And to see the kind of overall hypothesis that if we make more investments in the fan experience and the look and the fit and feel of the show, that people are willing to pay for that, whether that's brands or fans or whatever. Yes, the show is more expensive, and I'm grateful that people are investing their money in the show and buying tickets and buying booths and supporting. Our sponsors have been incredibly generous with us the last 24 months. And we've used those resources to try to put them back in the show and kind of show them that if they give us the money, we're going to use it responsibly to enhance their experience and enhance the experience of the athletes and the fans. So that's it. That was a risk because we didn't know that people were going to come back, and they have come back and they supported the event. That's, for me, that's very rewarding.
We'll talk a little bit about the UK show. You're there now, obviously. What would you want fans to know about this weekend show?
The show's going to be really good. I think in some ways it's like a new launch show because we haven't been here. We had a different organizer. We had some controversy around the prior organizer. We have big brands here. We've got a great lineup. The tickets to date have been really good. So people probably don't know this, but we sell about half of our tickets on site. So you don't know until you know. But, you know, we have, whether it's Young LA, Dark Sport, Ghost, we have huge brands here. Panada, SPD, Rogue, and any of the other brands I forgot to mention. They're all very important too. I think people in Europe have not experienced a show like the show that we have in Columbus, and I think this is a very good representation of what it is that we do in Columbus, which I think is different than what any other show does in the world right now. And I think people are going to be, I hope will be really happy with the quality of the show, quality of the live stream, and that it's a product that's consistent from one continent to another continent. Because when you're working with global brands like Celsius, or you're working with Rain, or some of these companies that are in every supermarket around the world, they just want to know that what they're investing into is going to be predictable and it's going to do the things that you say it's going to do. So I'm incredibly proud of our team, who I seem to keep just pushing harder and harder. They keep responding, and this is going to be a good show. And I hope people who are watching this in the UK, you come out to the expo, because I promise you there has not been anything in the UK that looks like this. This is a really exceptional produced show. The booths are really incredible. And I'm not just saying that as like a yard barker. I think Nick knows I'm pretty glass half full in life. But I'm telling you, this is a good show. And if you got the time and you got the money, I would encourage you to come out.
What's the size of that expo like relative to the Ohio show as far as number of vendors and the size of the convention center? Is it pretty
Convention center is
comparable?
almost the same size.
Okay.
Yeah, it's pretty comparable. Convention center is the same size. Attendees, still too early to predict, but we're on par with, I would say, like 20, somewhere between 2022 and 2023 attendance, which for most of your viewers, that has no meaning at all. But it's a big show. It's a big show. Our bodybuilding Saturday night's almost sold out. Friday night's got great attendance. Strongman, both days in general seating is sold out. We've had great pickup on tickets. Like, I think people are excited. And I think it's, again, just being consistent and being a reliable partner with these brands has given brands the confidence, these bigger brands the confidence to invest in what is essentially like a startup show. And also having Arnold Schwarzenegger. Let's not pretend that this is not all possible because of his investment, his legacy. I mean, I'm not saying that as just a throwaway line. The guy is like literally a big part of bodybuilding. So it's in a lot of ways makes my job a lot easier, because I can just say, and Arnold Schwarzenegger will be there, and it becomes a lot easier to do things. What makes it hard is you have to deliver for those brands and you deliver on things that you promise. But yeah, it's mostly Arnold, basically.
I'm kind of curious for you, not necessarily from a business perspective, but from a personal perspective. What would you say your highlight of the Arnold weekend was this year in Ohio? Like, what was your favorite personal moment that had nothing to do with the success of the show?
I would probably say that my parents came to the show. I don't know if you met them or not, but
I don't think I did.
my parents don't go. They don't go to a lot of my events, not because they aren't interested in what I do, but just they're busy people too. And my dad's retired now, so he had a chance to go see the show and meet Arnold and do all that stuff and kind of see what it is I'm talking about when I'm ranting to him on the phone at 10 o'clock in the morning on summer morning. Um, and just getting a chance to see the show sort of through their eyes was a really unique and kind of special experience. So I would say that was the personal highlight for me. And then I think professionally, personally, there are a lot of people who've been working with me for a long time that got an opportunity to do more things, have more responsibility, and they really knocked it out of the park. So for me, to have employees that I put time into to try to help them be prepared to take the next step, and then seeing them take the next step and be successful at it, that brings me a lot of satisfaction. And like the other stuff, the online stuff is great too, but like those, when you really try to put yourself into people and then you see them succeed, it's very personally rewarding.
So since this is kind of like your intro to the bodybuilding fan base, it's like your first publicly facing interview to this community, what would your message to the bodybuilding fans be, coming from Brian Powers, the executive director of the Arnold? What do you want the fans to know?
I would say that if you're watching this channel, if you watch the content, if you like the athletes' content, that you played probably the most pivotal role in the overall growth of the sport. And what does that mean? That means, historically, obviously, you used to buy magazine subscriptions instead of watching Nick Strength and Power. And that created a substantial amount of revenue base for these athletes to chase their dreams. And that model's changed, and that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. It allows people like Nick to exist. He wouldn't necessarily exist in a traditional media format. And I think that's great for bodybuilding. But incumbent in that is the power or responsibility to try to directly support these athletes in a way that wasn't necessarily as much previously. And what do I mean by that? I mean, buy their stuff, even if they're not great salespeople. Buy their t-shirts, support the brands and support those athletes. Everybody's got to wear a t-shirt. Try to find one from an athlete that's up and coming, or try to support your favorite bodybuilder. When you come to our shows, you're supporting our business, but that's my responsibility to convince you to come and invest in the show. But you can you singularly sitting at home with your credit card in one hand can change those bodybuilders' lives, so they don't have to work a full-time job, or they can quit their part-time job, or their wife can help them cook their meals and be home more and take care of the kids. Those are easy things you can do by buying a t-shirt, putting their code in, and just be a conscious shopper if you're a fan of the sport of bodybuilding, and try to do things with intention that support the sport of bodybuilding. And it may not seem like a lot to you, but trust me, people buy billions of dollars worth of clothes, and they buy billions of dollars worth of supplements. And if all the people that were following those athletes, either through channels like Nick's Truth and Power or Buys and Tries or all these other platforms, just shop with intention, those athletes' lives would be immeasurably better than I can do singularly by raising the prize money. So I would encourage you, if you love bodybuilding, support bodybuilding, follow those athletes, buy the products that make sense for you to buy, especially if they're just replacing products that are already in your closet or in your pantry that you have to buy anyway. Those little steps, even though they're a couple bucks here or there, they make a huge impact, especially in the guys that are just coming up. Like the guys who are really struggling, they're guys who are living in their cars, guys living at home in their parents' basement because they love bodybuilding and they just want to be a pro bodybuilder. You can make a difference in those people's lives by, in any small way, buying their stuff. Even if they're not great at telling you the story, they need the money. And I really try to encourage and emphasize people to do that, because it really does change their lives.
Well, I think we kind of covered everything we wanted to touch on. Is there anything else that we didn't talk about that you think we missed?
No, I'm sure no one's watching at this point. So maybe I'll say something crazy. You can cut into a short and then they'll watch it. But no, it's been good. I know I don't like doing these, but this wasn't horrible. So maybe we'll try it again another time.
I think it's going to go over better than you think. And I'm sure you'll call me tomorrow when you read the comments and you'll be pleasantly surprised.
I don't have time to read the comments, Nick. It's like a disaster. I've got a lot to do for Birmingham. And I'm sure the only thing I'm going to be thinking tomorrow morning is, why am I still up doing this? I mean, I need to be sleeping. But thank you for having me on the program. And I appreciate the opportunity, and I will try to, maybe we'll do like a Q&A. We'll take like questions and then we'll try to like answer the questions or something like that.
Good, yeah.
Like, I don't know what to talk about necessarily, but maybe we'll do Q&A or something like that next time.
Yeah, that'd be cool. Well, thanks for your time, man. I appreciate it.
All right, you're a good dude, Nick Miller. I enjoyed talking to you, and I do appreciate you're one of those people that that is a lot of the YouTube. I do spend a lot of time talking to the YouTube community, whether it's you or Doucette or Nick Trigili, all those guys. You know, I do take time to try to hear what you guys have to say, and Fuad and Dennis and all the other people who have. I try to go as broad as I can, and I don't necessarily listen to everything you guys have to say, but I do try to hear you out because I do think you understand your fan bases really well, and it helps me. It's like cliff notes of trying to figure out what fans actually want. So I appreciate you spending the time helping me make the show better, and you have helped the show be better. So I hope, you know, whatever that means. But you've been a good guy and a good ambassador for bodybuilding, and I think your content is really good. So. And obviously, I'm not the only one because there's a lot of people watching it, but you're a good guy, dude. And I really appreciate your help.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. And I appreciate you guys watching. Make sure you like and subscribe, but also check out the Arnold UK this weekend, arnoldsports.com/TV. Peace. All right, guys, don't forget to click that like button and subscribe to this channel if you enjoy the content. Also, check out my Instagram at NickStrengthPower. My Facebook page, which is simply Nick Strength and Power. My secondary YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Vlogs, for vlogs and bonus content that you will not see on this channel. And consider subscribing to my third YouTube channel, Nick Strength and Pokemon, which is all things Pokemon and trading card games, completely unrelated to this channel. So if you're into that, give that one a look. And all links to merchandise and social media will be in the description box below. If you guys want a Nick Strength and Power t-shirt, that will be in the Shopify link below. Have a great day.